successful. It crashed in White Sands, New Mexico. We tracked it. We were tracking it at the time, and we were successful in damaging it enough where it crashed.
I can verify, corroborated by the people that I have worked with and do work with now.
I made a comment that was really funny at that particular point. I didn't really connect it with anything until later. He says, "You have no idea at all what we're about, do you?" And I told him, "No, sir, I don't." He says, "Well, someday the technology will be out there that has been totally back-engineered." Went right over my head at that particular point.
When we gave the information out, we gave it out and insisted they take the patents. But also we put a little bit of a requirement on there. Requirement, feed it back to us for the competitive edge of the Army. Take the patents, make all the money you want, but give it to the American people and give it to the world. The Japanese, they interviewed me, and I told them when we put the integrated circuit out, we also gave it to you.
Also had fiber optics laying there. They didn't know what these things were. They figured they were wires of some sort, but didn't know how they operate. The interesting thing that shows you that we have not achieved the point of where these fiber optics are is my dad would also hold them in his hand, and when he closed his hand around them, the ends would be glowing. So this means they contain their own energy.
Okay, well, why would you need a fiber optic system in a spaceship? Well, okay, if suddenly everything in the vehicle suddenly becomes mass canceled, and even the electrons become mass canceled, it means that all of the telemetry that's going through your system is going to go out of haywire. It's going to be like suddenly the system goes through a phase change and everything's superconducting. Why use fiber optics? Because photons have no mass, supposedly, so they're unaffected. So it means that any information, any telemetry that you send back and forth to your computer, it doesn't matter if the computer functions at a superconducting level because it just makes it faster, more efficient, smarter. But you want to be able to control the aircraft so it doesn't crash. What's the best way to do it with fiber optics?
A second innovation involves the delicate task of monitoring composite surfaces against pressure, stress, strain, and chemical decomposition. This is often achieved through a series of Bragg rating sensors located along lengths of fiber optics which are embedded into composite materials. However, NASA has increased the sensing locations exponentially from what is currently available. Applications for the macrofiber composite are almost limitless.
They had a big black curtain that divided the hangar into two different areas, and that behind these curtains was another big area, and inside this area they had all the lights turned off, and they go in, they turn the lights on, and here are 3 flying saucers floating off the floor. No cables suspended from the ceiling holding them up, no landing gear underneath, just floating, hovering above the floor.
Deanne Divis with United Press International. Could you please address the vehicle that there was a drawing displayed of? Why would this vehicle be on display at an air show?
We said there were 3 vehicles. The first one, the smallest one, the one was partially taken apart, the one that was shown in the video that was running in this hangar, November 12, 1988 at Norton Air Force Base, was about 24 feet in diameter at its widest part, right at the base of that flange.
In a few instances, I can say there are clearly over-unity electromagnetic devices, things that produce more electrical energy out than in.
This is an alien reproduction vehicle, and just to be clear, this means that it is based on advanced anti-gravity and zero-point energy propulsion systems.
The next biggest one was 60 feet in diameter at the base.
There are corporations such as SAIC, Lockheed Martin, Northrop, and others that deal specifically with advanced energy and propulsion systems connected to UFOs. And I think that what has happened, from the best we can tell, is that we have lost control of these projects from a constitutional law perspective because the infrastructure within military intelligence and corporate channels is so well funded.
Oh, by the way, and the largest of 3 vehicles was about 120 to 130 feet in diameter. And that's massive. think about. It's just huge.
The reason it's called alien reproduction vehicle is that it's based on the study of extraterrestrial vehicles, but it is manufactured by human military intelligence, aerospace contracting arrangements.
We are not in Kansas any longer.
Brad said that in this exhibit in Norton Air Force Base that a three-star general said that these vehicles were capable of doing light speed or better.
I think they made a mistake at Roswell. Rather than admitting it, they covered it.
Our moon is an object that exists in our immediate space. For years, there have been anomalies recorded such as mysterious lights, flashes, and objects that have been seen by astronomers here on Earth. NASA released a compilation of these recorded reports prior to the first moon mission.
Gemini 7 here, Houston, how do you rate? 1 clear, 7, go ahead. Confirm you at 10 o'clock time. This is Houston, say again, 7? I said we have a bogey at 10 o'clock time. Roger.
Building control here again. The reference in that time replay was bogey. It was Borman who reported sighting the bogey. This is Gemini Control Houston at 4 hours, 24 minutes into the flight.
Well, as far as the moon is concerned, I think they found when they got up there that there was already somebody there. And I wouldn't want to say any more than that. But they got out of there and they haven't been back. But I have seen certain documents and read certain reports that indicate that there's somebody already there that knows a lot more than we do and would be willing to run us off if we didn't go on our own. I doubt that we will go to the moon again.
It has been argued that the moon could be used as an indicator of extraterrestrial visits to our solar system. Unfortunately, the detection of ET artifacts on the moon is outside the interests of most mainstream archaeologists, as archaeology tends to adhere to a pre-Copernican geocentric point of view. It is generally accepted that the search for alien artifacts on the moon is not necessary because there are none. Given the success in using terrestrial remote sensing to find archaeological sites on Earth, can similar techniques be used to find possible artificial construction on the moon and other planets? For example, the ancient Corinthian fortress Khoi Kragankala in Uzbekistan, constructed between the 4th century BC to the 1st century AD, appeared as an impact crater before excavation in 1956. On the moon, Khoi Kragankala would not be perceived among all the other impact craters. In 1962, Carl Sagan spoke on the possibility of discovering alien artifacts on the moon, stating that forthcoming photographic reconnaissance of the moon from space vehicles, particularly the far side, might bear these possibilities in mind. Rectangular patterns on airspace photos are recognized as signs of human culture in the remote sensing of the Earth and air archaeology. It seems reasonable, then, to search for rectangular patterns on the moon or on Mars.
I walked into the photo lab in the restricted area, and this was between missions. One of the gentlemen I had been friends with, and I still talk to occasionally, he pointed to one area of this mosaic. It was one panel of a mosaic with a smile on his face. He said, "Look over there." And I looked, and in one of the photo panels, I saw a round white dot. And at the time, it was very crisp, very sharp lines on it. And I said to him, what is that? Is that a dot on the emulsion? And then he's grinning, and he says, dots on the emulsion don't leave round shadows on the ground. And there was a round shadow at the right angle, at the correct angle, the sun shining on the trees. I saw pine trees. I didn't see a coastline. I don't know where this was. And I said, "Is this a UFO?" And he's smiling at me, and he says, "I can't tell you that. I can't tell you that." What I knew he meant was, it was, but he couldn't tell me. So I said, "What are you going to do with this information?" And he said, "Well, we always have to airbrush them out before we sell them to the public."
In 1965, in mid-1965, I was loaned to the Lunar Orbiter Project at NASA on Langley Field. They had problems with a piece of electronic equipment that was bottlenecking their production of photographs. I was taken into the laboratory where the equipment was malfunctioning. The Airman Second Class was in the darkroom at that time. I was also an Airman Second Class. About 30 minutes into the process, he said to me in a very distressed way, "By the way, we've discovered a base on the backside of the moon." And then he proceeded to put photographs down in front of me, and clearly in these photographs were structures, spherical buildings, and towers.
Always airbrush these out before we sell them to the public.
Mosaics and showed this base, which had geometric shapes. There were towers, there were spherical buildings. There were very tall towers and things that looked somewhat like radar dishes, but they were large structures. If I compare it to what I'm seeing now, because I do have photographs that have artifacts in them that are similar to what I saw, they're massive. Some of the structures are, half a mile in size. So they're huge structures. Some of the buildings seem to have very reflective surfaces on them. A couple of structures that I saw reminded me of cooling towers at power generating plants. They had that sort of a shape. Some of them were just very, very straight and tall with a flat top. The particular shot that I saw, there were several clustered together over a landscape, a fairly large landscape. I worked there for 3 more days, and I remember going home and naively thinking, I can't wait to hear about this on the evening news. And here it is, more than 30 years later, and I hope we hear about it tonight. And I will testify under oath before Congress that what I'm saying is the truth.
In 1959, the U.S. Army completed a plan for a manned military outpost on the moon. The Horizon Lunar Outpost was said to be necessary to protect United States interests on the moon, to conduct moon-based surveillance of the Earth and space, to act as a communications relay, and to serve as a base for exploration of the moon. The permanent outpost would cost $6 billion and become operational in December 1966 with 12 soldiers. The base would be defended against Russian overland attack by man-fired weapons. The Apollo program began only 2 years after the Horizon report, but a moon base would not have been established earlier than the 1970s.
During the discussion of UFOs, the question ultimately is going to come up, can any government keep secrets, let alone the U.S. government? And the answer to that is unequivocally yes.
People in high-level government have very, very little, if any, information, valid information about this. Most have no more knowledge than the man in the street.
There's always been what they call the need to know.
They keep pretty much each organization an island unto itself.
I looked at him and I was pretty startled because I'd worked out there several years and never seen anything like this, never heard of anything like this.
I had a top secret crypto clearance, and I could go into areas where my commanders, some commanders could not even get in.
He was a civilian, but had done a lot of work with NASA on a lot of committees and what have you. And I think his problem was the fact that he hadn't heard about this.
They can't get in there because they don't really have the need to know, even though they have the same clearance as the guy that gets to go in there.
He knew that he was very important because he was on a lot of committees in NASA. And since he was very important but hadn't heard about this thing, this couldn't be true.
The UFO secrets can be kept secret from other people who have the same security clearance.
And the truth is, they have hidden things like UFO and extraterrestrial information from us for years. Not just the current era, but back before the 1900s.
There's about 38 levels above top secret. The highest is cosmic. That's, okay, I'll tell you right off now, that's UFOs, aliens, and particleization. Now, like you heard a while ago, there's only probably about 25 people in the world that know things that are known at that level. No president has had that level, has ever been cleared for that level. Eisenhower was the closest. Eisenhower wanted somebody to be in charge. He tried the CIA director, and it didn't work. CIA was working primarily for itself. Most of the intelligence directors of the services were working for themselves.
What happened was Eisenhower got sold out. I think that he realized that all of a sudden this matter is going into the control of corporations. He realized that he was losing control. He realized that the phenomenon of whatever it was that we were faced with was not going to be in the best hands, and those were as far as I can remember, that was the expression that was used. It's not going to be in the best hands.
In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex. The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist. We must never let the weight of this combination endanger our liberties or democratic processes. We should take nothing for granted. Only an alert and knowledgeable citizenry can compel the proper meshing of the huge industrial and military machinery of defense with our peaceful methods and goals.
And so it was organized under the name the NRO. You couldn't mention NRO.
NRO, National Reconnaissance Office, basically run by the Air Force. The Reconnaissance Office, from my understanding of people that I've had contacts with since I retired, has taken on a lot more responsibility, particularly towards UFO and extraterrestrial activities. You could say that they picked up where Blue Book dropped off.
If you're on that level, there's an organization worldwide called ACIO. That's Alien Contact Intelligence Organization. If you pay your dues and you follow the rules, you can benefit, your government is allowed to benefit from that organization's information.
Henry Kissinger headed some sort of a study group back in the 50s to study the ramifications of this information if it had leaked through a credible source. In fact, Jimmy Carter was not brought into the loop. They, for some reason, the control group, they don't trust the guy for some reason. They don't trust Jimmy Carter. They were afraid that he would come out and make statements, blanketed statements to the news media.
I was contacted by Ms. Marcia Smith, who was the director of the Science and Technology Division of the Congressional Research Service. She asked to meet with me, and I met with her, and she informed me that President Carter, upon taking office in January of 1977, held a meeting with then the Director of Central Intelligence, who was George Bush Sr., and demanded that the Director of Central Intelligence turn over to the President the classified information about unidentified flying objects and the information that was in the possession of the United States intelligence community concerning the existence of extraterrestrial intelligence. This information was refused to the President of the United States by the Director of Central Intelligence, George Bush Sr.
Told us we could not talk about this to anyone, including any of the other crews, our spouses, our family, even amongst each other. So we could not discuss this at all.
In the military, they do ridicule you, and I was ridiculed a few times. I was told I would never make Master Sergeant. I was on orders for tech. But I was told I would never make Master Sergeant when I brought this crap up again.
The pilots that had seen things and talked about it, some of them were let go, some of them released from their flying and treated as nutcases and things like that.
At times I used to carry a nuclear weapon. In other words, I was
mentally fit to carry nuclear weapons, but I'm not mentally fit if I see a UFO. Well, this criticism and this ridicule has, I think, done more to keep the story coming out than almost anything else.
It had been discussed with me on numerous occasions. Talked about what could happen to me militarily and what could happen to me even if I discussed this as a civilian.
That subject just was dropped. It just wasn't discussed.
Anything to discredit you, and you'd never get a promotion, and I'd spend the next 3.5 years up the North Pole living in a tent checking weather balloons.